Hello everyone, my name is Paul. Welcome back to the new news. I hope that everyone's having a fantastic day. I hope that you, your family, and your friends are safe, and if not, I do hope that you find that safety and security in the very near future. We are covering the last week of major global developments and what has happened in the news, and there's been quite a few. Now, unlike normal, a lot of what we're focusing on over the past 7 days is going to be a lot more to deal with things such as humanitarian efforts, as that's something that really isn't talked about nearly as much, at least not this in this day and age. Everyone focuses on the developments, but not necessarily what's happening. And part of the whole project here, part of what the new news started in the effort to do, is to raise awareness about what is happening throughout the world, what is going on, and what people can do to help with that situation, provide a way to help with that situation. So 100% of everything we do here is about charities and helping people that are affected by each and every single one of the news stories that we have covered since we started the channel, and we continue to do that endeavor as we continue on here, continuing with this channel and with this project. And so if you see what's happening, and if you would like to give and help the people that need it the most, if you check out the video description of this video, you'll see that there are a ton of donation links down there. Each one of those is something that we have gone through as an organization and vetted to make sure that at least 70% or more of the donations that they receive go directly to their programs, meaning they go directly to helping people, while 30% or less go to things such as salaries and administration's costs, which really eat into the good that a lot of these organizations are attempting to do. And so please, there are tons of them down there. They cover a very wide range of topics, whether that be in regards to Ukraine, whether that be in regards to what's happening in Africa, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, even North America and South America. We cover the whole globe, and we want to continue trying to do as many good things as we can and try and raise awareness and support for the people that need it the most. And so with that, as we get ready to get into the news here, if you have any questions, please feel free to jump into the live chat and ask them. I am watching the live chat. Hello, everyone. Riley, Tim, Epps, Aravis. It's glad to see everyone back. I even saw Nuclear pop their head in here. So it's always great to see everyone jumping in here. And if you do have questions, feel free to ask it. I am monitoring it, and I'll answer them live here on stream to the very best of my ability. Give you a little bit of a background on myself. So I served in the Marine Corps between 2016 and 2020. I served as an O-352 anti-tank missileman and a corporal with 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. I did 2 tours in the Middle East. My first tour, I went over there and I was in Kuwait, as well as then going and spending about 4.5 months in the country of Syria. That was between October of 2017 through March of 2018. Following that, I rotated back where I ran an armory within for my company, and then we went back over to the Middle East, and I was the Javelin team leader for the Crisis Response Company out of Kuwait, where I spent the majority of my time. On New Year's of 2020, I then went to the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad and was part of the 100 Marines that secured the U.S. Embassy and provided the security there, and I oversaw all anti-arm operations over the Baghdad Embassy complex. Then I went down to Saudi Arabia, trained Saudi Arabian Marines before once again rotating home in March of 2020. I am a subject matter expert in anti-armor warfare and armored doctrine. I'm also a fully cross-trained rifleman, a fully cross-trained machine gunner, and partially cross-trained radio operator, as well as a CLS or Combat Lifesaver Certified Marine, meaning I've received additional medical training, and I do have real-world experience treating casualties, especially in my time in Syria. These days, I am a logistical coordinator for a motor vehicle transportation company, and so I do both international and transcontinental freight here in North America. Other than that, I have interest in other things, science, history, human geography, the likes. However, I am not an expert in any of them. I just have interests, but I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. Regardless if I'm an expert or not, I always implore that you as a viewer, please do your own research, as there is no substitute for doing your own research when it comes to these topics. Please do not believe everything that you're seeing on the internet. And so with that, we begin the stream properly. As you can see, some of my co-hosts, Javelin, who's hiding currently up there, the newest co-host, and named after my favorite weapon system, the Javelin anti-tank missile. But other than that, we jumped right into the news here. I apologize for the background noise, as we do have 4 co-hosts now. 3 cats and a dog. So we jump down here into Kyiv, where we see that boosting project delivery capacity through Ukrainian institutions is really a focus right now, as a lot of areas are currently getting cleared out with a counteroffensive. And that's going to cause another wave of refugees, of course, as the fighting it definitely increases in its kinetic intensity, as well as other developments inside of Ukraine that have caused a pretty widespread amounts of casualties and destruction in the recent past couple of weeks. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, or the EBRD, European Investment Bank, EIB, and the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development have agreed at the London Ukraine Recovery Conference to cooperate on the Ukrainian government on supporting institutional capacity building. The cost assessment of reconstruction by the World Bank and Ukrainian government is over $411 billion over the next 10 years. Financial agencies will first focusing on providing technical assistance and sector expertise to the state agency for restoration and infrastructure development of Ukraine, and to establish the effective project delivery unit. This could then be extended to the other ministries and agencies, including training of civil servants, engaging local and international experts through transparent selection processes. The efforts are aimed at addressing the lack of financial capacity contributing to the recovery of the country itself. So already you're seeing, in the course of this war, you're already seeing that in these areas where the fighting really isn't that intense at this point, you have times where they're under shelling, long-range cruise missiles and ballistic missile strikes. But overall, in some areas, especially in these rear line areas, we're looking at the need to that shift in focus to recovery, looking at trying to rebuild the country that has seen an immense amount of destruction over the last 487 days. You mind, this war, its kinetic intensity is something that even myself as a post 9/11 veteran, as many other veterans can agree with, is of an intensity that nothing that even we have seen before in the war on terror. The war on terror over the last 20-something years, while there have been definitely major engagements, major amounts of very destructive fighting, you have isolated incidents of very similar kinetic intensity in their battles. The battle for Sangin and Marjah, for instance, the Battle of Fallujah probably illustrates it the best over the last 20 years. But overall, we're not seeing quite that amount of destruction or that amount of kinetic intensity in those wars that we have seen in this one, for lack of a better term there. I mean, it's just a different scale. When you're talking about an international armed conflict between two major industrial countries, there's really not any other war that is able to match that level of destruction. We can already see this is coming from the Ukraine Recovery Conference. And of course, there's more information coming from reliefweb.international. Coming down here into the Kharkiv Oblast, once again, looking at these rear line areas, the World Food Program and FAO are currently clearing agricultural land of explosives. It is hard for one to imagine the amount of explosive projectiles that have been used throughout the duration of this war, especially due to the Rasputitsa mud, that especially very much early on into the war last year. What we have seen is large amounts of grad rockets, cluster munitions, landmines, you name it, that have just sunk into the mud, that have been scattered, everything from small rounds to, large rockets and even ballistic missiles just being stuck in fields all over the place, strewn about. This has made it very difficult for agricultural workers coming back into here because things, their tractors are going to set off these anti-tank mines. While people don't have enough weight to set them off, vehicles most certainly do. And we've already seen instances over the past year of individuals who are fighting, who have returned to these areas where there was previous fighting to work their own fields and have been very seriously injured, if not killed, due to their tractor hitting a landmine or hitting unexploded ordnance that's been buried in the mud. And we're starting to see that once again here as we continue with this fighting. It would appear that one of my co-hosts has decided to go nuts. No, not you. The other one. Okay, I'm going to get one of them over here, I guess. Yes, hello. So, anyway, the World Food Program and the Food Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, the FAO, have launched a joint program with a demine action partner, Foundation Société de Manège, or FSD, to help rural farmers in the Kharkiv Oblast. The main goal is to safely release back land to productive usage during demining and removing of explosive items, restoring the land to be fit for agricultural needs, so as to ultimately phase out the need for long-term humanitarian assistance for thousands of rural families. The goal of the first phase is to identify and map land, so that requires demining in coordination with locals. The second phase, demining teams will survey and demine the lands. The third phase, the FAO and the FSD will test soils and assess for contamination as a result of unexploded ordnance. The project is $90 million short of its funding goal of $100 million. The FAO and WFP estimate potential annual savings up to $60 million in direct food assistance to rural communities. We jump down here into the Kherson Oblast, over to Novokakhovka. Novokakhovka Dam seems to have been detonated by Russian forces. That has caused the complete structural failure of the dam itself. That caused very widespread flooding, and recovery efforts have continued to be ongoing over the last couple of weeks. Humanitarian focus is currently underway after the destruction of the Kakhovka Dam. The flooding caused by the destruction of the Kakhovka Dam has, for the most part at this point, receded. 2 weeks after the incident, humanitarian organizations and entities, including the World Health Organization, at least 12 partners are implementing health interventions, including mobile teams for tuberculosis, HIV, mental health, and non-communicable diseases, and others. WHO has participated in the surveillance of waterborne diseases, including cholera, E. coli infection, including risk assessments, providing lab kits, and to pick up alerts and water quality issues. USAID has also delivered aid-assisted water removal, supported rescue to populations of Odessa, Kharkiv, Chernihiv, and Sumy regions who were impacted by the destruction. The Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in the World Food Program and Logistics Cluster deployed boats and amphibious trucks to enable delivery of humanitarian assistance, including food, water, and hygiene items. The IOM has dispatched over 100,000 liters of water to the Kherson region and continues to conduct water trucking, providing 20,000 liters daily. The International Organization for Migration, or OIM, UNICEF, UNHCR, WFP, WHO, Intersos, and Solidarities International have provided the aid. As of June 22nd, an estimated 200 houses remained flooded, and 4,000 people were displaced. At least one rescue worker was killed during shelling. That is correct. We do have confirmed reports of shelling of people as they were trying to evacuate civilians out of these flooded areas. The Russians were shelling both the evacuees and rescue workers actively during the shelling, or during that evacuation. We continue to see this stuff from USAID. See people talking about not using ear pro and being partially deaf. Yeah, that was my mistake. Well, amongst other things, the last thing you usually care about when things kind of go downhill in country is your ear pro. That definitely certainly had an impact, I think. Yeah, so during my time in the Marine Corps, of course, I shot missiles. During missile shoots, I wore ear pro. Whenever we're back in the States in training, I used a lot of heavy guns. I was in a mounted light infantry unit called a CAT team, or Combined Anti-Armor Team. And yeah, I never used ear pro. Even shooting the 50 cals, or the Mark 19s or 240s or anything, I never wore ear pro, which has definitely caused some significant ear loss. So that's a thing. Tim says you're tired. Why are you shooting still? Groundhogs. So I have a groundhog problem. Oh, there's Javelin. For those that have yet to see him, this is Javelin. He is a rescue, and he is named after an anti-tank missile. Yes. Hi, bud. Yeah, he's just an adorable little thing. But yes, so I have a groundhog problem, and I still have I have a couple of rifles, but one of them is this little old. It's from the so it's a little old 22 long rifle, and I shoot groundhogs with it still. So it's always a fun time, though that really doesn't bother me. I really don't have a problem. It's usually the heavier fighting, or it's usually the heavier rounds that give me the trouble. Don't want Javelin just trying to bite me. He is a feisty thing. We continue over here into Rostov-on-Don, which I'm sure many of you are already aware of. He's hungry. Yes, he is hungry. Where the Wagner Group committed mutiny. Yeah, that's the thing. So, the Wagner Group, under the direction of Yevgeny Prigozhin, was disbanded after a phone call involving both Belarusian President Lukashenko and Putin. This comes after large groups of Wagner troops moved out of Ukraine and successfully took control of the city of Rostov-on-Don, facing absolutely no resistance. It is reported that the members of the Wagner Group will be permitted to join the Russian military proper to continue the fight inside of Ukraine. There are possible indications this may have been a coordinated political move on the part of the Kremlin, though. And so, however, there is not a lot of information to verify these claims. So there is a lot of things. There's a lot of things in regards to whether this was an actual mutiny, this was a political move, this was. All we know is that there was absolutely no fighting. There was no resistance, which was very very much was counteractive to what we would expect from the Russian military, even the Russian National Guard, is that there was no resistance, no casualties, nothing. It was a big show, and another thing is that the thing is that with the Russian military and the Russian media, they're even talking about it on the Russian media, which is very weird considering the kind of circumstances. If this was a real issue, it would be something that you would expect for the Russians to be a little bit more hush-hush about. Now, it being a very large city, the 11th largest city in Russia, that could mean that it may have just been too big to keep hush-hush, but overall, the situation ended within 24 hours. So, coming from TASS, which is a Russian state-owned media, you can see so this is them saying that they're aware of the situation unfolding. Dmitry Peskov did later say as well as Medvedev, that they were going to allow Wagner forces to join the Russian military after the disbandment of Wagner. We can see Wagner forces in Rostov-on-Don preparing to leave. Oh, there they are. Traveling. This is along the M4 highway. Bookham 40 says, how come Wagner still controls the military airport? Wagner pilots are pissed over the loss of Russian aircraft. Well, the Wagner Group... A lot of people talk about the Wagner Group in kind of, I think, the wrong sense. They talk about the Wagner Group as a separate entity from the Russian military, which in technicality, yes, but in reality, no. A lot of people talk about the Wagner Group as they talk about contractors here in the United States. Blackwater, Triple Canopy, Veterus, for instance. All of these different contractor organizations that also conduct operations with the U.S. military, but are inherently just mercenary groups working for the government as contractors. To supplement manpower and specific job needs the military may not have, or the military mission requirements may not want to deploy those specific military forces to support. Well, that's great, except for that's how the U.S. and how other partners operate. That's not what the Russians do. The Wagner Group is less of a mercenary organization, even though it's technically a mercenary organization. It's less a mercenary organization, more of a plausible deniability military asset. The Wagner Group is used to conduct clandestine missions where the Russian military does not want to formally engage in operations. The problem is that also means that they're expendable, and it can have kind of a morale defect, or it can have a very difficult time for morale for Wagner Group forces, which is part of the issue that we have seen, especially when they get left to, bite it, essentially. Great look at this is the Battle of Qashm, or the Battle of Conoco Fields, as some people like to call it, in Syria in 2018. February 7th and 8th of 2018, Russian military forces of the Wagner Group crossed the Euphrates River in the middle Euphrates River Valley near the city of Qashm, which is in Deir ez-Zor province. What this ends up doing is, Qashm is right here, by the way. They end up crossing over this river using a bridge, and they end up pushing across that river to an outpost in the Conoco oil fields, which is all these oil fields just up north of here. And they end up engaging a U.S. military outpost, and they are bombed for about 3 to 4 hours continually and through the night and early morning, using pretty much every asset the U.S. military had available. And this is after being clarified with the Russian military hotline that their forces were not in that area. So they got left to be killed, and over 300 Wagner forces were killed and wounded, and roughly 100 pro-Assad militants were also killed or wounded in the action. There were no American casualties, and one SDF member, Syrian Democratic Forces member, was injured at his post at the beginning of the engagement. That is a great example of plausible deniability and what the Wagner Group is used for. If the U.S. military and the Russian military fought each other actively, and it was very clear this is the Russian standard military, this is the U.S. standard military, and they began engaging at Qashm, it would have been a large international incident and could have led to war. 100%. The Wagner Group was used instead in that exact same role, but if something is to go wrong, then the Russians can claim those are contractors, those aren't our guys, And all of a sudden, it is avoided that there's an international incident that could actually have devolved into a larger scale war. It's a clandestine operation. This isn't the only place you see it. The Wagner Group operates all throughout the Middle East and all throughout Africa. Africa is actually one of the key spots that the Wagner Group operates out of. Most importantly, Mali, which in Burkina Faso, which if you've looked at over the last couple of years, especially over the past year since we started reporting, Burkina Faso, it had a military junta takeover. The Wagner Group has been operating inside of Mali for some time, and they new military junta just overthrew the previous one, and the French forces, which have been supporting counterterrorism operations as the Islamic State and other militant organizations and terrorist groups operate inside of Mali, especially in this northern desert region, as we get closer to the Sahel, we see here that they get kicked out almost immediately. And what does the Wagner, and then the Wagner Group is spotted on drone footage going to a just abandoned military base of the French and creating a mass gravesite there, attempting to blame the French military for committing atrocities there. Once again, much more clandestine. If the Russian military was in Mali, that could cause a significant international incident that would involve Mali, the French, NATO partners, MONUSCO, as well as the Russian Federation. But because the Russian Federation has officially removed itself and allowed to use the Wagner Group inside of Mali, they can say, well, it wasn't our guys. So, and this is happening all over the place. Don't get me wrong. These are just two really good examples of what the Wagner Group is actually used for. You can look back through the history, the very checkered history of things such as Blackwater, and you can see where there were lots of concerns in regards to Blackwater. However, and you can say the same thing for many organizations operating inside of Iraq and Afghanistan. But the Wagner Group, it is an extension of the Russian military. It is an extension. It is the ability to do things that your standard military cannot do in a very open way, but that no one can prove that it was you. The Russian military can directly engage American forces through the Wagner Group. The Russian military could invade parts of Ukraine with the Wagner Group in 2014 when the group was founded. They could operate in Mali and attempt to plant mass grave sites to dissuade people from supporting the French government. They can conduct these operations anywhere in the world, and it's plausible deniability of what the Russians are wanting to do. They want to get something done, but they know that there's a really good chance of causing an international incident that could lead to possibly even war with another country. And boom, you end up being, the Wagner Group gets put into there, and all of a sudden, now it's not the Russian military, it's mercenaries acting in the interests of the highest bidder. Well, we won't have to worry about that anymore because the Wagner Group has been disbanded. But there are several, of course, like what I've already shown. We can see where there was kind of a mutiny. Once again, this could have been just a setup to give an excuse to break up the Wagner Group, essentially, and put it into the Russian military control direct. So, but a very interesting turn of events. Definitely some excitement this week. Jumping on here, we can see that in Iran, the European Commission of Humanitarian has provided a humanitarian situation update. According to the European Civil Protection's humanitarian aid operations, Iran is hosting an estimated 4.6 million refugees from Afghanistan. 750,000 are refugee card holders, and there were an estimated 2.6 undocumented Afghans who participated in a headcount exercise. The EU allocated 11 million euros in humanitarian assistance to Iran and host communities. including in education, health, nutrition, protection, basic needs, and disaster preparedness support. The U.S. allocated a total of 600,000 euros to support local efforts in assisting families affected by the earthquake which struck West Azerbaijan province in January 2023 and October of 2022. In Assam, India, thousands of people were displaced due to flooding. There was heavy rainfall over June 22nd and 23rd in Assam state, where 22 out of 31 districts were affected. One death was reported on June 22nd. The state reported that 500,000 people were reported to have been affected. Over 14,000 were displaced and placed in 83 separate relief camps, and heavy rains are in the forecast still continuing forward, which will continue to worsen the situation. When thousands of people have already been affected due to the heavy flooding or heavy rains since June the 15th. It's coming from the flood list. In the Philippines, hundreds are displaced after widespread flooding. Heavy rainfall has impacted places in Davao del Sur province of Davao region in Mindanao Island in the Philippines since June 19th. ASEAN Disaster Information Network has reported that 400 people have been displaced and evacuated to fire evacuation centers. The other news sources reported as many as 16,000 families have been displaced as of June 23rd. Strong rains are still impacting the region. And coming down here, hundreds affected due to landslides. There was heavy rainfall since June 19th, which affected mainly Java Island, leading to a landslide. According to ASEAN Disaster Information Network, 128 were affected, including 70 who were displaced. 70 houses were also damaged. See some of the effects of the landslides here. Moving from Indonesia, we come over here into Sudan. Restrictions and fighting have deterred medical aid. MSF, or Doctors Without Borders, has responded to the humanitarian crisis following the conflict between Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces, which has lasted for over 3 months now. The project's spreading out over 11 states, supporting surgeries for war-wounded people, pediatric malnutrition, and maternal health services, mobile clinics, in addition to providing water and sanitation to the displaced. The MSF surgeons have treated 1,169 patients within 5 weeks in a teaching hospital, many of whom victims of violent trauma. Their efforts have been hindered by the fighting entities, for example, not granted access to areas that need help or transportation of aid workers. Unfortunately, a lot of people are affected when it comes to any kind of a conflict. A lot of people that end up getting caught in crossfire or are deliberately targeted. It really depends, but there are a ton of civilian casualties. Keep in mind, it's no small feat. Over 1,100 people, almost 1,200, having been saved. But that's still give you an idea. That's probably only a very small fraction of the actual casualties that have been inflicted. Civilian casualties, especially, which have been inflicted throughout the duration of the conflict over the last 3 months now. We wrap up tonight by jumping down here. This is the resting place of the Titanic. This is just south of the Labrador Sea. This is where the currents from the Labrador Sea and the Gulf Stream actually meet here south of St. John's Island out here in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. A submersible imploded while diving on the Titanic at these coordinates. On the 18th of June 2023, the OceanGate submersible Titan began to descend into the cold waters of the Atlantic with 5 passengers on board about 4:30 a.m. local time. Roughly 1.5 hours into their 2.5-mile descent, the mothership lost contact with the submersible, sparking the deepest ocean search and rescue mission in maritime history. Encompassing dozens of aircraft and 9 separate vessels from an international team, the OceanGate submersible was believed to have imploded during its descent to the wreck of the Titanic, instantly killing all 5 on board. The pressure vessel meant to protect the crew inside was found in 2 separate debris fields on Wednesday, confirming the catastrophic destruction of the vessel. The Coast Guard was aware of the catastrophic destruction of the vessel after reports on late Sunday from the U.S. Navy's top-secret submarine listening array detected an underwater event at the location and time of the sub's disappearance. Recovery efforts are underway to investigate the cause of said catastrophe. The sea debris field was discovered within the search area. This is coming from the U.S. Coast Guard Northeast. Debris field was discovered within the search area by an ROV near Titanic. Experts within the Unified Command are evaluating that information. Similarly, that day they provided the press briefing about 1 p.m. in regards to the wreckage, confirming that it was. They found that there were 5 major pieces. There were 5 major pieces in regards to that. The tail cone, which was not part of the pressure vessel, was found, but the 2 end caps of the pressure vessel, which were made out of titanium, were also found. That indicated the complete destruction, the catastrophic destruction of the pressure vessel itself. There's a lot of talk going around in regards to this event, and a lot of talk in regards to OceanGate, in regards to what they've been doing, and some controversies. Some of them well-founded, some of them are not. I am not an expert in this field. I have interest in this field. I find the Titanic and I find wreck diving and things very fascinating. Always have, always been interested. However, I'm not an expert in submersibles or anything of the sorts. So that is something that they're working out right now. They're conducting surveillance and possible recovery of the debris. The debris was found about 1,600 feet off of the bow of the Titanic, which lies approximately 2.5 miles down in the water. Not a significant or not a small amount of depth there. And it took them several days to confirm. There were several reports that came out in regards to tapping on the hull. They do believe at this point that was actually other ships operating in the area, that they were picking up the sounds of people working in the engine rooms and the equipment and the likes. So, unfortunately, once again, all 5 people, including the CEO of OceanGate itself, were killed in the subsequent implosion of the vessel. But there's a lot more will be coming out in specifics as to what happened much later, once they actually conduct an investigation. But this will be pretty important in regards to the effects it will have on the entirety of the community. It's not a very small community, but it's not a very big community in regards to deep sea submersibles, but it will have very profound impacts on further research missions and what have you going down there. So we have a lot to learn. We'll have a lot to find out about. Now, apparently we did miss something and we misspoke. Initially, when we were conducting research, I was not really seeing any casualties as a result of what was happening in the Wagner crew and Rossa van Dawn. Apparently, there were at least 12 separate pilots and 8 crewmen that were killed as a result of aircraft being downed by the Wagner Group during the coup. So, yeah. So far I'm seeing 12 pilots and 8 crewmen so far in result of downed aircraft during the coup, which does correlate with the fact that there was very heavy or very intense aircraft activity of Russian military aircraft around Rostov-on-Don on that day. So that is something that looks like that we will have to correct. So it looks like there were casualties in part on that time. But so I appreciate the assistance in letting us know about that and letting us correct that. So I apologize, everybody. But with that, that's actually all the news that we have for tonight in regards to the last week of like major incidences. We'll be looking at kind of what's going on over the next kind of week or so. See what we can put together in regards to the major important things happening throughout the world. But keep in mind, the whole main point of this channel is to try and help people. That's kind of the whole point of the project, is to try and inform people, let them know what's happening in the world, and to try and help people that are affected directly by these different situations. So please be sure, check out the video description below. Check out all the wonderful organizations that are down there. And be sure to, if you can't give a lot to these organizations, give a little. And if you can't give anything at all, that's okay too. One of the biggest things you can do is help the channel. We can try and grow this project. The more people that come here and watch the news, become informed of what's happening in the world around them, the more people that will be here to be able to help those in need. So other than that, I hope that you, your family, and your friends do end up remaining safe. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your week. Please be safe throughout your work week, and I hope that you get a lot of things done. But other than that, we will see you back here on Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Central on Sunday. So other than that, I'll talk to you guys later. My name is Paul from the New News, and have a great night, everybody. Bye now.
Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стояду в головах і чутно кличе діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Нам не треба ні конфлікту, ні війни. Та ми готові всіх вас звать до сатани. Тисячі вже полягло, і все більше шверхуйло. То для них нема нічого, крім труни. Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стоять в головах і чутно кличе діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Вызволять пришел, братишка, ну привет. На моей земле тебе один ответ. Нашим людям с кирпичом, даже танки и бачок. Вам не взять нас и за 100 тысяч лет. Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стоять в головах і чутно кличе діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО.
Mr. Putin, on behalf of all our guys, no one's scared of your nuclear device. You can take your top 11, shove it up your wrinkled butt. Oh, we'll come and help you fit it in your skull.
Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стоять в головах і чутно кличе діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стоять в головах і чутно кличе діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стоять в головах і чутно кличе діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стоять в головах і чутно кличе діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Ідіть нахуй!